The diner's air reeked of burnt coffee and regret, but nobody noticed until a scream shattered the morning hum. "You think I'm invisible?" a voice thundered, slicing through the clatter of plates like a knife through silence. It was 7:42 a.m. at Rosie's Diner, a greasy spoon tucked in the heart of a small Ohio town where time seemed to crawl and prejudices lingered like stubborn stains. The voice belonged to Marcus Tate, a black man in his early 30s, broad-shouldered, dressed in a crisp navy blazer that stood out against the faded red booths. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto Sarah, a waitress whose hands trembled as she clutched a coffee pot. She'd ignored him for 20 minutes, serving every other customer white customers while his order sat untouched on the counter. The room froze, forks hovered mid-air, conversations died. Every pair of eyes swiveled to the showdown at table 9. Sarah, barely 22, with blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, felt her cheeks burn. She hadn't meant to ignore him, not consciously, but the truth was uglier. She'd seen Marcus walk in, noted his skin, and let the old habits of this town guide her. It wasn't hate, she told herself. It was just how things were. "Two was busy," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, but the lie hung heavy in the air. "Busy?" Marcus's laugh was sharp, bitter. "You served that guy who walked in after me. And her." He pointed to a woman sipping coffee 2 tables over. "And them." His finger swept across the diner, landing on a family of 4 who'd gotten their pancakes in record time. "But me? Nothing. Not even a glance." The diner's owner, Rosie, a stout woman with a permanent scowl, emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a stained apron. "What's the problem here?" she barked, her tone more annoyed than curious. She glanced at Marcus, then at Sarah, and something unspoken passed between them, a look that said, "Keep the peace, don't make a scene." But Marcus wasn't here for peace. "I'm the problem?" Marcus said, standing now, his voice rising. "I'm a paying customer, same as everyone else. Or does my money not count here?" He pulled a 20 from his wallet and slapped it on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The diner was a powder keg, and Marcus had just lit the fuse. At the corner booth, unnoticed until now, sat a man in a tailored charcoal suit, his presence almost too polished for the chipped Formica tables. Ethan Caldwell, a billionaire tech mogul, had chosen Rosie's Diner for its anonymity, a place to escape the headlines and sip coffee in peace. But peace was the last thing he'd get today. His sharp green eyes tracked the scene, missing nothing. He'd seen this before too many times. The slight tilt of his head suggested he was calculating something, but no one could guess what. Sarah's heart pounded. She wanted to disappear, to rewind the morning and start over. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean." "Didn't mean what?" Marcus cut her off. "To treat me like I don't exist? To make me feel like I'm less than everyone else in this room?" His words weren't just for Sarah now. They were for the diner, the town, the world. You don't get to say sorry and make it vanish. You don't get to pretend this isn't what it is. The room was suffocating. A few customers shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting away. Others stared openly, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed disdain. Rosie stepped forward, her voice low and sharp. "Sir, you need to calm down or leave. We don't tolerate disruptions." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Disruptions?" He turned to the crowd, his voice steady but electric. "I'm the disruption? Not the fact that you all watched her skip me and said nothing? Not the fact that this town's been doing this for years, and you all just let it slide." Ethan Caldwell set his coffee down, the faintest clink breaking the tension. He stood, all 6 feet of him commanding attention without effort. He's right, he said, his voice calm but cutting through the noise like a blade. Every head turned. I've been watching. 22 minutes. That's how long he's been waiting. I timed it. He nodded toward Marcus. You served everyone else. Why not him? Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came. Rosie's scowl deepened, but even she seemed rattled by Ethan's presence. He wasn't just a customer. His aura screamed wealth, power, someone who could make or break a place like this with a single phone call. This is my diner, Rosie said, but her voice wavered. We don't need outsiders telling us how to run it. Outsiders. Ethan raised an eyebrow, his tone deceptively light. I'm just a guy who paid for coffee and expected to see basic decency. Guess I was wrong about the second part. He turned to Marcus. What's your name, sir? Marcus Tate, he replied, his stance still guarded but curious. Marcus, Ethan said, nodding. You shouldn't have to fight for a seat at the table literally or otherwise. Let me buy your breakfast. And theirs. He gestured to the room, a faint smile playing on his lips. Maybe it'll remind everyone we're all human here. The diner erupted in whispers. Sarah's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the coffee pot. Rosie's face turned beet red, caught between fury and embarrassment. Marcus, for the first time, softened slightly, but his eyes still burned with unresolved anger. I don't need your charity, he said to Ethan. I need respect. And you'll get it, Ethan replied, his voice steady. But first, let's eat. Then we'll talk about what respect looks like in a place like this. The next hour was a blur. Marcus sat reluctantly at Ethan's table. His breakfast served promptly, this time by a different waitress, one who avoided Sarah's eyes. The diner buzzed with uneasy chatter, the weight of the confrontation lingering. Sarah hovered near the counter, her mind racing. She wasn't a bad person, she told herself. She'd grown up in this town, absorbed its unspoken rules without questioning them. But now those rules were crumbling, and she was standing in the rubble. Ethan and Marcus spoke quietly, their conversation drowned out by the clatter of plates and the hum of the diner's ancient air conditioner. Ethan wasn't just a billionaire throwing money at a problem. He was listening, nodding, asking questions. Marcus, guarded at first, began to open up. He was a software engineer, he explained, working remotely for a startup in Chicago. He'd come to town to visit his aging mother, only to be reminded why he'd left in the first place. I've dealt with this my whole life, Marcus said, his voice low but steady. The looks, the assumptions, the way people tense up when I walk in. But today I was done taking it. Ethan leaned forward, his expression unreadable. You shouldn't have to fight this fight alone. And you won't. He glanced at Sarah, who was wiping the same spot on the counter for the third time. She's young. She can learn. The question is whether she wants to. Sarah caught his glance and felt a pang of shame. She wanted to apologize again, to explain, but the words felt hollow. She'd been raised to believe certain things she'd never questioned until now. Her friends, her family, even Rosie, they all moved through the world with blind spots, and she'd followed suit. But Marcus's words, Ethan's calm authority, they cracked something open inside her. By noon, the diner had emptied out, leaving only the faint smell of grease and the echo of the morning's drama. Rosie called Sarah Dillinger, Sarah, to the back. Clean up and get back to work, she said gruffly, but her eyes lingered on Sarah with a hint of disappointment. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. She approached Marcus's table, where he and Ethan were still talking. Can I say something? She asked, her voice barely audible. Marcus looked at her, his expression hard but not unkind. Ethan raised an eyebrow, leaning back to listen. Sarah took a deep breath. I was wrong, she said. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I did. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Words are easy, he said finally. Actions are harder. You want to fix it? Start by seeing people for who they are, not what you assume they are. Sarah nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I will, she whispered. She glanced at Ethan, expecting judgment, but he only nodded slightly, as if to say, keep going. Ethan stood, tossing $100 bill on the table. Let's take this outside, he said to Marcus. I have a proposition for you. The two men left, leaving Sarah standing alone, the weight of her mistake pressing down on her. Outside, Ethan and Marcus stood by a sleek black SUV, their conversation intense but out of earshot. Sarah watched through the window, her heart heavy. She didn't know what Ethan was planning, but she sensed it was bigger than a free breakfast. What she didn't know was that Ethan Caldwell wasn't just a billionaire passing through. He was a man who'd built his empire on second chances, on lifting up those who'd been knocked down by the world's injustices. And Marcus Tate, with his fire and his dignity, had just caught the attention of someone who could change everything. For Sarah, the journey was just beginning. She'd spend the rest of the day replaying the morning in her mind, questioning everything she thought she knew. For Marcus, it was a moment of vindication, but also a challenge to keep fighting. And for Ethan, it was a spark, a reminder of why he did what he did. The diner, once a sleepy corner of a small town, had become the stage for a collision of past, present, and future, collision that would ripple far beyond its walls. Outside Rosie's diner, the Ohio sun beat down on the cracked asphalt, glinting off Ethan Caldwell's sleek SUV. Marcus Tate stood with his arms crossed, his expression a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Ethan, leaning casually against the vehicle, spoke with the measured confidence of someone used to being heard. I'm not here to play hero, Marcus, he said, his voice low but firm. But I know talent when I see it, and I know injustice when I see it. You're a software engineer, right? Ever thought about leading your own team? Marcus raised an eyebrow, caught off guard. You offering me a job because of what happened in there? He jerked his thumb toward the diner. I don't need pity. This isn't pity, Ethan replied, his green eyes steady. It's opportunity. I run a tech incubator in Chicago, small startups, big ideas. I could use someone with your fire, your perspective. People like you don't just solve problems. You see the ones others miss. He paused, letting the words sink in. But it's your call. You in or you out? Marcus hesitated. He'd spent years grinding through a world that often felt rigged against him, from microaggressions at work to outright slights like today's. The idea of a billionaire swooping in to fix his life felt too neat, too convenient. But Ethan's offer wasn't just about money, it was about power, a chance to build something on his own terms. What's the catch? Marcus asked, his voice edged with caution. No catch, Ethan said. Just work, hard work, and a chance to make a dent in places like this. He nodded toward the diner, where Sarah was still visible through the window, wiping tables with a distracted, haunted look. You'd be based in Chicago, leading a team on AI-driven community solutions. Interested? Marcus exhaled, his mind racing. Chicago was close enough to visit his mother, but far enough to escape the suffocating weight of this town. He thought of her, frail but fierce, telling him since childhood to stand tall, no matter who tries to cut you down. This could be his way to do just that. Send me the details, he said finally. I'll think it over. Ethan smiled, a rare crack in his polished exterior. Good. My people will reach out by tonight. He handed Marcus a sleek business card, the kind that felt more like metal than paper. And Marcus? Don't let today define you. You're bigger than this place. Inside the diner, Sarah moved through her tasks like a ghost. The weight of Marcus's words clung to her, each one a mirror reflecting truths she'd avoided for years. She'd grown up in a town where us and them were unspoken lines drawn in every interaction: schools, churches, even this diner. Her parents, her friends, they all carried the same quiet biases, not hateful but insidious, woven into the fabric of daily life. Sarah had never questioned it until now, when the shame of her actions burned hotter than the coffee she poured. Rosie, meanwhile, was in damage control mode. She'd pulled Sarah aside earlier, hissing, "Don't let that scene ruin my business." But Sarah saw the flicker of unease in her boss's eyes. Rosie wasn't stupid. She knew the town's ways were outdated, but change was risky, and Rosie's diner was her lifeline. A boycott, a bad review, or worse, lawsuit could sink her. She'd already sent the other waitress, Jenny, to smooth things over with regulars, offering free pie to anyone who'd witnessed the blow-up. Sarah, though, couldn't shake the image of Marcus's face, the raw hurt and anger in his eyes. She wanted to make it right, but how? An apology felt like a bandage on a broken bone. As she cleared Marcus's table, she found the 20 he'd slapped down, still lying there like an accusation. She tucked it into her apron, vowing to return it somehow, to do something that mattered. By late afternoon, word of the incident had spread through town like wildfire. The local X account buzzed with posts, some defending Sarah, "She's just a kid, made a mistake," and others condemning the diner. "Rosie's been pulling this crap for years. Time to shut it down." A few mentioned the mysterious billionaire, speculating about his motives. "Bet he's just here for clout," one post sneered. Another read, "Finally, someone called out this town's BS." Ethan, oblivious to the online storm, was already planning his next move. He'd seen potential in Marcus, not just as an engineer but as a leader who could challenge systems from the inside. But he hadn't forgotten Sarah either. He'd watched her during the confrontation, seen the conflict in her eyes: ignorance, not malice. She was young, moldable. The question was whether she'd seize the chance to grow or retreat into the comfort of denial. That evening, Sarah's shift ended, but she lingered, unable to face the world outside. The diner was nearly empty now, just a few stragglers nursing coffee. She sat at the counter, staring at the 20 in her hands. Jenny, the other waitress, slid onto the stool beside her. "Rough day, huh?" Jenny said, her tone light but kind. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "I messed up, Jen. Bad. I didn't mean to, but I did." Jenny shrugged. "We all mess up. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I want to fix it, but I don't know where to start." "Start with listening," Jenny said. "Not just to Marcus, but to yourself. You know what you did was wrong. That's a start." Sarah's eyes welled up. She thought of her dad, who'd once told her, "People are people, Sarah. Treat 'em that way." She'd nodded then, but she hadn't understood, not really. Now she was beginning to. The next morning, Marcus woke to an email from Ethan's team, detailing the job offer. A 6-figure salary, equity in a startup, and a chance to lead a project addressing systemic inequities through tech. It was the kind of opportunity he'd dreamed of, but never expected to land this way. He called his mother, who listened quietly before saying, "Take it, Marcus, but don't forget where you came from. Use it to lift others up." Marcus spent the day researching Ethan Caldwell. The man was no saint. His empire had faced criticism for data privacy issues, but his track record showed a knack for betting on underdogs and winning. By evening, Marcus replied to the email, accepting the offer on one condition. He wanted to mentor young engineers from towns like this one, places where opportunity was scarce and prejudice was plenty. Meanwhile, Sarah made a decision. She found Marcus's address through a friend who knew his mother. With the $20 bill in hand, she drove to the small house on the edge of town, her heart pounding. When Marcus opened the door, he looked surprised but not hostile. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone neutral. Sarah held out the 20. "This is yours. I can't undo what I did, but I want to start somewhere."
I'm sorry, Marcus.
"Really? And I'm trying to learn." Marcus took the bill, studying her. "You're not the first person to mess up like that," he said. "But you might be one of the few who's trying to own it. Keep going. It's not about me forgiving you, it's about you changing." Sarah nodded, tears spilling over. "I will," she said. "I promise." Back at the diner, Rosie was forced to confront the fallout. A local activist group announced a protest outside the diner, demanding accountability. Rosie, pragmatic as ever, called a staff meeting. "We're gonna make changes," she said gruffly. "Training, policies, whatever it takes. I'm not losing this place over stupidity." Sarah volunteered to help, suggesting they invite community leaders to talk about bias and inclusion. Rosie, reluctant but cornered, agreed. Months later, Marcus was thriving in Chicago, leading a team that developed an app to connect underserved communities with job training. He visited his mother often, each trip a reminder of why he'd taken Ethan's offer. Sarah, meanwhile, had enrolled in an online course about systemic racism, reading books she'd never touched before. She wasn't perfect, but she was trying, really trying. The diner, under pressure, became a model for change in the town, hosting monthly forums where people like Marcus could share their stories. Ethan, true to form, stayed in the background, his role in the story known only to a few. He didn't need the spotlight, he needed results. And in Marcus and Sarah, he saw two sides of the same coin. One fighting for justice, the other learning to see it. The ripples from that morning at Rosie's diner spread far beyond Ohio. They sparked conversations, arguments, and, in some cases, real change. But the work was far from done. What do you think? Where does justice begin in a story like this? And how do we bridge the gaps in our own communities?